And today's stakeholder, foot soldier, is my good friend Javier Farfan, or El Tigre, El Patrón. Bienvenidos, mi amigo.
¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás?
Todo bien, todo bien.
I never advocated for this El Tigre thing. So
No,
I don't know where that came from.
Quítate. Tú eres El Tigre.
All right.
That's how they know him in the streets up in the Heights.
Right.
We're going to get into that. Javier hails from New Jersey, but you were born and raised in...
Yeah. I don't qualify myself as a New Jersey person. I'm still New York.
Yeah, and no disrespect to the New Jersey people, but no, I'm a Brooklyn born, and he's from Manhattan or the Bronx.
Manhattan.
Yeah. But let's get back to the script. So we got to let people understand why we refer to you as El Patrón, El Tigre, you know, Papa Chulo, Papi Chulo in your neighborhood. Is because this man goes hard in the paint. We go back many years.
Many
years. Not many decades, many years.
Yeah.
So,
but a decade.
More or less. It depends on who's counting.
Exactly.
But we started out in school together. But anyway, Javier is a marketing maven, and what he's going to help us understand today is how do you create, leverage, and execute an effective marketing campaign in today's highly politically correct environment and this very fluid digital ecosystem we're all living in these days. And he's the man to do that for us. So clearly Javier qualifies as a stakeholder. His name rings out in the streets. Even today, we go up in the Heights and you say, hey, yo, yo. When he shows up, everybody comes out. You start hearing the perico.
I haven't been to these situations that you're talking about.
Listen, man, I know we listen, off camera, we still gets it in. So anyway, good to have you back at the Brooklyn Ballroom Hive. Yeah. So let's just jump right in. So basically, as you know, or I've told you, this show is all about empowering, educating people who are quote unquote traditional outsiders and providing them with an insider's point of view of how this business operates and giving them tools so that they can maneuver in this business, whether it's as entrepreneurs or as executives or as anyone just chasing the bag, right? So anyway, so let's lay the groundwork. Right? Again, I want to make sure that people who are either new to this business, this area of the business, have the fundamentals figured out so that they can launch their own in marketing campaigns.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have any fundamentals. Like, I just jumped in.
I know.
And I think people have to do that and work hard and figure it out as they go. What I can say is that it's all about hustling hard. Like I'm just it's really the name of the game.
I understand. Suave, por favor. Because here's what I want to do. You're right. There's a time and a place where you just learn, the hard way.
Yeah.
However, when the clock is ticking, the baby's crying, dollars are being spent, you know what I mean? You want to be as strategic as possible, right? Yeah. So my question to you is really this. You understand for those out there who are entrepreneurs, they understand their brand. What is the first thing they should be thinking about before they embark upon any kind of marketing campaign? What are the basic steps? You know what you're gonna do. Hey, I have this, I'm selling that, I'm doing this. But what are the steps, the incremental steps you take to examine your strategy before you actually even launch your strategy?
I mean, you have to know your consumer. Who
is your audience?
Yeah, who are you selling to? Like, I think that's the fundamental of anything you do, right? You have to understand what's your target, where are you going, where's the North Star? When you understand that, when you're understanding your product and how people think about your product or how you want people to think about your product or what do they care about and desire, then you could start laying out a plan on how to make sure that you could address that gap or that value, right? Because there's a value that the consumer wants. And you have to figure that out and create that proposition. And then everything kind of falls into place.
This may be a silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyway for those that may not have the answer. You said you have to know who your consumer is, who your target audience is. Yeah. How do you ascertain that? How do you figure that out?
In my career, I've always been very attuned to what's going on in the world, right? I'm a culturalist in nature. Like I'm more of an anthropologist. I like to understand, right? There's like that psychological kind of aspect of how I looked at the world since I was a little kid. I grew up in Harlem, where I was like the only Latin dude, in a predominantly African American neighborhood. So I was very insular and thinking and exploring and understanding what's going on. And I think that has transcended through my career and how I deal with people. And as a marketer, it became an actual asset for me. So I think it's just innate in certain people, and I think people of color actually are even more innate to it because they're always examining their culture and their environment and how they approach it, right? So I think we're natural, marketers in that sense. But you have to understand your consumer, understand what really drives them. You have to understand your own needs, right? After that, you do research. You have to justify, or you have to qualify if your assumptions are right.
How do you go about that research, and how do you go about that justification, that vetting process? What are some of the basic tools, resources, websites? What do you do?
I mean, the easiest way of doing it is just asking the question, right? Like when somebody grabs your product, your material, or whatever, is like, why do you like it? How did you hear about it? What about it makes you feel good? And just start honing in and always asking that question to everybody you do it. I mean, there's that one-to-one relationship, but then it's also about, starting a dialogue with them, through social media. You could also do some surveys. There's so many tools now to get information. But when I think about my career in the past, and when I was part of this team of young guys coming out of college, and we started a hip hop magazine. What
was the name? Just plug it.
It was Stress Magazine.
Stress Magazine
at the time. I remember, we just put stuff that we cared about, and we knew there was a void there, and we knew that we loved, urban music and that the culture behind it, and we wanted to tell that story for the public. We knew that there was a demand because we wanted it, and we couldn't find that, and we built it. But what really made it work was, people started to write to us across the country, and they were asking for more of stories on graffiti, or they wanted to get a deeper look at what was going on in Brooklyn, the music scene. They wanted to go into Puerto Rico and this whole and that helped us understand what the consumer wanted, and that kind of built momentum,
So it sounds to me like early on you realized that engaging your audience, being in dialogue with your potential consumer was very valuable data and information to understand your brand, whether you were delivering on that value proposition, and what was missing, right?
Exactly
engagement. Right. So let me ask you this. Now, clearly you're no longer kind of in the weeds of this stuff. You've amassed a lot of success and done bigger and better things, but like, for those of us at home with a laptop and a Wi-Fi connection, and you mentioned surveys and data, are there particular websites or programs you'd say, hey, this is worth investing some time reading, this is worth investing some time buying, to utilize that as a marketing tool, as a research tool?
I think the biggest marketing tool you guys people have is social media, right? Like I'll give an example of my wife. She actually started a blog on spirituality, and she's evolving that not because only of her kind of thought process, but what the community is asking of her, right? And that's actually creating kind of where the path of her brand is going. I think a lot of people have those tools now, and that's why there's so many micro influencers kind of doing that space.
Interesting.
So that, I think you start there. The other thing is there's tons of tools out there like Monkey Survey.
Yeah, okay.
That you can just go on, type it up and pay a little fee, and you can survey the people that are already interacting with you, or you want to have a specific question to that. But honestly, it's really social media is really the thing. You pose a question, you put a question up there, and people will get back to you.
Okay, fair enough. So we've talked a little bit about kind of like the basics of marketing and how to get off the ground. I'm wondering if you can point out an example or two from your estimation that were really successful campaigns, things that we can learn from, whether it's a major brand like Pepsi or whether it's a homegrown brand that I can't think of at the moment. Anything come to mind?
Anything that comes to mind.
Campaigns for film, TV, products.
I mean, I think Beats, did an amazing job of launching their product, at the time. I mean, look, there wasn't really that many players in that space that was being innovative and evolving kind of that technology. They knew that they had a particular person that signified, meaning Dr. Dre, that signified kind of the essence of like the quality of music. Mm-hmm. And they went out there and they had a really particular point of view on what quality meant and how it would impact culture. Right, and they stuck to it, and they had a point of view, and they kind of rode that through in the music world and in the sports world. And look, they created a multi-billion-dollar business that they sold to Apple. Like, how much more success?
No.
You know what I mean? And they use their resources to do that, right? They freaking Jimmy Ive used, his connection to the music world and his relationship with his artists to really build a solidified, platform there. They did the same thing on the sports side. You know what I mean? They partnered with certain people, and then they asked them questions about what they would like from that technology and how they would need to utilize that technology. Hence, wireless headphones and how they think about performance and using it while they're working out. All those things were questions and research that they were doing as they built that,
Okay. Well, let's do this. Let's dive a little deeper, and get a little bit and let's get in a little bit of a more trickier conversation, for those of us that this impacts. So you have lots of folks out there that either represent international, that's not the right term, multicultural brands, or are speaking from an ethnic point of view. Mm-hmm. We'll use Latinos and African Americans at the moment, since that's the easiest to point to based on, the heritage in the room. So is there any other considerations that Latinos, African Americans, people that should be thinking about if they're representing brands that are based in those cultural experiences, or consumers that they want to target in those experiences, or as marketing executives? Are there any delicate areas?
I mean, I don't know about delicate areas.
Unique hurdles.
Yeah, I mean the hurdle is just institutional racism is the hurdle, right? Like people try to do everything as efficient as possible in big corporations, right? So the biggest thing is, like, how do you get one message across to as many people and not really worry about the differences of folks, right? But and what happens, unfortunately, to brands that do that, they don't kind of pop off in this world anymore. You really have to have a distinct point of view, and you really have to understand your consumer. As a person of color, or thinking about culture, you have to understand the cultural context of what's going on. And it's becoming even more and more important, because one-to-one marketing is becoming kind of the way you do things right now. That's, all the digital companies have really kind of made consumers expect you to have a personal relationship with that brand. And also they expect, some type of value specific to them in regards to that brand. So when you're thinking about a person of color, you have to think about that cultural context. People a lot don't want to think about it, or they don't want to even get involved with that. And that's been my challenge as being a multicultural marketer in some of my positions. They don't want to invest in putting that effort and energy into that. And the fight as a person who's trying to push culture forward with brands, it's the internal battle of, like, saying why it's important.
Why is it important to this community? Why is it important to this
culture?
brand?
And why is it important to the brand to invest in that community, to build that relationship?
So the challenge has been trying to help the brand understand the value by targeting this brand or specific campaign
to this consumer
who is an ethnic consumer, or at least you're having ethnic experience, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I don't see it as ethnic experience. It's just a different cultural context, right? And I just want to be clear about that, because people don't see themselves as ethnic. Like I was just hanging out with a couple of Latina women who are, we're doing some stuff, with a campaign that we're doing. They don't see themselves as Latin. They were talking about all these other lifestyle pieces that they're into. They just have a different, unique way of looking at that lifestyle piece because of their ethnic background. Like, that's the complexity that we're at this point,
Interesting.
So as a marketer, how do you get into understanding those little complexities and then pushing messages within that make the person feel like, wow, they get me. I want to invest in that brand, or in that product, or in that service.
Well, you raised the question: how do you get that connection without necessarily having a personal experience yourself?
Yeah, I think what's happening now with marketers, or what I'm seeing. I'm also a professor, and I teach marketing to young folks. I feel marketers are becoming more storytellers and more kind of narrative kind of journalists or editorial people, I think those are the stronger marketers, the people that actually can have a narrative and have a complex dialogue that goes back and forth, and being able to do that on a consistent basis. So the way we used to think about marketing back in the days was like, hey, we got a plan for the year. I think this still happens, but it's evolving. So you plan for the year, and then you're like, okay, when do I sell the most stuff? Oh, it's going to be here and here. Okay, we're going to create campaigns around that or leading up to that. So then you create a cycle of maybe 3 or 4 campaigns to kind of drive demand for your product. That doesn't happen anymore as much, because now you can buy things all the time. So how do you make sure that you're constantly, having a conversation, and depending on what's going on in the world, you have to change your dialogue so you're reacting to the cultural context, what your consumer needs, and what you're trying to sell, right? So you have to be like at the pulse of what's going on, like a writer, right? A writer every day is kind of understanding what's going on, writing it, pushing it out to the public, getting some dialogue, and then jumping back in. We have to be now. We used to be called brand managers. I think we're now brand makers on a consistent basis.
Brand makers,
yeah,
not brand managers.
Yeah, we are constantly making new and evolving the brand as the cultural context change. So it's just a different state of mind that people have to be about. But if they're
going to be effective in this job,
exactly, and in the world, the way the world's going.
I see.
Right, and the other piece of it is that you have so much information, right, coming in. So it's crazy, because we were at CES, yourself and we were kind of going through the thing, and the conversations are changing so much because there's just so much information, right? And there's 3 forms of stuff that's going on. One of them is machine learning, right? And then the other piece of it.
What's machine learning? What's that?
I'm gonna get into that right now in a second. So the first, you got to think about data science, right?
Yeah.
So it's about insights. We used to have consumer insight. We were just talking about it, but now it's really about, you have so much information. How do you create? How do you use that, and how do you analyze it or go into all that data? You pulled out some rich, real-time insights that's going to drive your thinking.
Wait,
right?
Let's pause there for a second. When you say insights and data, I think you're referring to analytical information like likes and impressions, and
it's beyond likes and impressions already.
Okay.
It's deeper. It's like they know when you're waking up, and they know when you are asking for this latte, or they know when you purchase this, or they know when so there's everything you're doing is being documenting in some way.
Vis-a-vis companies, large media organizations, or large brand organizations. Obviously, the person who has his mom and pop business selling widgets doesn't have those kind of resources.
They do, though.
They do, even now.
Even now, because you're going to connect back to your Facebook feeds, and you're going to understand your consumer.
So you can drill down that deep in that level of detail.
You can actually pull that information from
Facebook.
I'm not sure about Facebook, but you can pull it from different types of sources of how you build your digital footprint for your brand.
Okay.
And you're going to get all that information. Now, how do you
process it?
How do you process it? How do you use it to be to be beneficial to you? And then that's where the machine learning comes in, and that helps you predict your behavior for the future. So then you can monetize that to make sure that you're getting your product at the right place at the right time, or you modify your product for that.
Totally. Let's go back a little bit. I just want to make sure that we understand the anatomy of a marketing campaign. What's the basic anatomy of a marketing campaign?
I wouldn't say the anatomy of marketing. I would say, look, what do you need to create a strategy and a plan, right? And then the campaigns come out of that, right?
Well, let me give you some examples of what I'm referring to, right? So if I'm thinking about, Pepsi releasing a new flavor of their drink, I'm going to think there's probably going to be a press release. There's probably going to be a commercial. Yeah. There's probably going to be some maybe.
But you're already going to the tactic, is my point.
Okay.
Like when we're not even thinking about that. Like, you have to go all the way to the front end, right? The front end is like, okay, this is how much money we're making. This is what our competition is doing. We need to make X amount of dollars, or we feel that we're losing an opportunity in this space. That's where the strategy comes in. I see. Right? And then you're going to make a decision. You're going to make a decision. Hey, do I have the product to fill that void, and I have to increase the awareness to get more of that share, or there's no product in that space. I got to create something to fill that void. You know what I mean? So there's all those kind of conversations to make sure that you're, putting the right thing in place.
It sounds like what you're saying is you have to really you have to sit down and really do an analysis of the business at hand, the landscape of your business, to figure out what's not being served in the market, or what you're not serving, where customers are being underserved, to figure out exactly how you can expand that business offering.
Exactly.
And then once you figure out where you need to expand it, then you begin to think about
the plan
to close that gap by increasing your reach in terms of marketing and promotion.
Exactly. So it's really about kind of coming up with what that strategic plan is, right? And then from there, and you have to understand your consumer, your competition, and how you play within that space. And then from there, when you have that, overall vision of where you want to go, what you want to sell, who the consumer is, then you create a plan around it, right?
Okay.
And that plan is going to be 3 years long, 6 months long, whatever it is to get you going. What is the plan? So the plan could be like, hey, I just want to launch the product. Okay, so now the campaign comes in. Okay, now how are we going to launch the product? Or it's, I want to make sure that I sell things, in the next, every 6 months, I want a big peak of sales, because we know that, during the summer we sell more, and through, holiday we sell more of these things. So then you create campaigns around that to create the demand. So you have to understand what that strategic vision is. Then you could put a plan against it, and then the campaigns come in to support the plan. And then depending on the need of whatever your initiative is going to be what levers you use, right? So if it's a launch, maybe you don't want a commercial. Maybe you just want to do press and really get the momentum of the community, and you create vibrancy, engagement about the dialogue of that to get people hyped about it. Maybe it's nobody's been talking about your brand for years, or you're seeing a lot of decline. Well, maybe there is an advertising campaign that we need to put you right front and center, and making sure you get as much awareness as you possibly can. So it all depends on what you need. And these are where the levers come in. So it could be heavy promotion, where you have to be more tactical, one-on-one. Or it could be publicity, right? Because you're going to need as much free press that you can get. Or so that's where it all comes in. But it's all under the umbrella of marketing.
Okay. Well, let's do this. We want to switch gears a second, because I think you just described to me what someone like you does when you're presented with a budget and more or less a plan. But how do we gauge someone like you from the perspective of, I'm a business owner and you're a marketing consultant?
Yeah.
So, I think I may need someone like you on my team, or I think I may need to hire someone for a fixed period of time, but I don't know that it's going to be a productive use of my resources, because my resources are limited.
Yeah.
So help me understand a couple things. One is, what does someone like you or someone similarly situated, how do I budget, and what do I expect to spend hiring someone with your expertise? It's not someone maybe a little bit more junior to you. And number two is, how do I even gauge your success? How do I know the money I've invested in bringing you on the team or paying your retainer for 3 months is really making a difference? Because I'm not going to see those profits probably, if they're already extra profits, probably till like the next quarter.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep you on the payroll for 6, 8, 12 months.
Yeah.
So
I think everybody has that challenge, right? So that's the challenge for me, being an entrepreneur and trying to sell my service, to them understanding what that need is. I mean, I think my first job before JP Morgan was being a management consultant. And I think that trained me to be a better entrepreneur, because when you're coming in, it's all vague. There's nothing that's really like, this is how you do it. There's nothing like that. What they gave you is tools on how to understand what a business problem is, right? You're coming in, you're assessing the situation, right? You're assessing kind of how you're managing your relationship with your business, right? And then from there, you have to validate if what you're thinking is right is the problems, right? So they're going to have their evaluation of, I think I need this, I think I need this, I think I need this. And then you're going to be like, okay, so tell me what's going on in your business. Tell me, what's your strategy, how you're getting to that strategy. And then you're going to say, hey, I think what you're saying is that you think this is the problem, but maybe that isn't your problem. Maybe it's this and this and this. Is this working? So you're
Am I paying you for that initial consultation?
No, you have to do the consultation on
but
the
am
strength.
I paying you?
No,
Okay.
on the strength.
So that's basically gratis. You come in and say, hey, this is what I think your business needs.
Yeah.
This is where I think you're falling short. And by the way, you don't owe me anything after this consultation, is whether it's an hour or half an hour.
I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not charging every time you even walk into the freaking door.
I wish I could do that. You know what I'm saying? And I am a lawyer,
Exactly.
but it doesn't always work that way.
But my point is, like, you have to understand the thing, and then you kind of clean up by writing out all your assumptions. There's tons of assumptions that you have because you have certain biases. The other person they have certain biases. Get all that stuff cleared up, and then you come back with, hey, this is what I think I could do for you, right?
I see.
But when you say that, when you do for you, it's not like, hey, I'm gonna just do this. It's what is the goal at the end of the thing. If you don't put like a metric at the front of it, then people are gonna be less less eager to like say, I want to give you a retainer, right?
I see.
So most of my engagements, I'm like, hey, look, I'm gonna get you a brand to do something with you by this date, and if it doesn't,
so tangible deliverables that you can measure is part of your proposal, and
you have to.
Yeah. So anyone presenting a proposal to you as a marketing consultant, that is, when I say you, I mean anyone out there as an entrepreneur, they should give you tangible deliverables that you can measure their effectiveness and their success.
Exactly right.
Now, what kind of fee structure and range are we looking at? How much is what's the standard?
I don't know if there's a standard, right? At least I haven't figured that out in the past, I guess 17 months that I've been an entrepreneur. I've been very opportunistic. I mean, I network my ass off. Like, I'm always out there just talking to people and understanding if there is a need for me, right? And then from there, it all depends on, do I know that they have the resources to pay me? And if they don't, is there another way that I could get, some type of form of compensation for what I'm doing? So if it's a startup, I'm probably not gonna hit them over the head for some, like, a lot of cash, but I'll ask for some back end money or some equity out of that business. But if I know that they're a little bit healthier, I'll try to stay at a range that I feel is adequate for that business, right? And that industry.
So you gauge it based on the size of the company.
Yeah.
How I guess,
and the industry itself, right?
How healthy economically the company is, or fiscally.
Exactly.
And that's when you begin to build out what you think, your services merit.
Exactly.
And then you tend to work for a period of time, a month, a week, 6 months, 3 weeks. Is there any particular rhyme or reason to the?
I try to at least have a 3-month engagement with most folks I have, because you can't get anything done in a month, right? Because then I'm just becoming a tactical person. Give ourselves 90 days to kind of figure out if there's a relationship. And usually if you hit certain specific goals, then you have a longer, range of stuff that you can do.
And like you said, you're creative with the fee structure, so it may not always be upfront.
Yeah.
Cash, it could be a combination of cash and equity or other deferred compensation.
But I know what organizations have paid me, like as a full-time hire, so I understand what my hourly range is, right? So I think about that also in that. So, and there's a premium to your hourly range because you don't have insurance and you don't have all that stuff, so you have to add a premium to them. So I work with a number that I'm always trying to hit, from a 60-hour week kind of range, and I have to hit that number, and depending on how many clients, I try to fit it all together,
And what makes for a productive client collaboration with you? What do you tend to need or tend to value when you and the client come together that works for you, that makes the process run smoothly and productively versus,
one of them is trusting the process, and being involved with the process. Where it doesn't work is when, they're like, hey, I need you to do this. You come in, you talk to them for the first week, and then you don't talk to them again, and they'll come back a month from now. Hey, did you get this? Did you close this? then it doesn't work, because they're not giving you the resources or their own resources to help you kind of get to that stage.
They're not engaged.
They're not engaged.
They don't have the skin in it. They just look at you as like, just get it done.
Exactly right.
On your own, and you're it's a collaboration, right?
It totally is. And then the other piece of it is not really understanding, the challenges and of what's going on. You have to understand. It goes back to engagement, but you have to try to understand what the challenges are for that marketer or for that finance, consultant or whatever you have. You really need to know your business. Even though you're not doing it, you need to know it. If you're going to be investing in certain people, you need to have a basic understanding of asking the right questions, because then you're not going to trust that person, right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to trust that person in what they're delivering to you. So when they're vested in it and really try to understand it, it becomes a mutual relationship, and we're building to actually build your business, right? So I think that's important.
So now you've described a lot about how things operate as an entrepreneur, working with a marketing executive, as a marketing executive yourself, trying to like leverage a brand, how to build a campaign, how to analyze a business.
Yeah.
And having understood all of that and having that background and context, I guess I want to dive a little bit deeper into understanding some of the snafus and the big mistakes. Now, having worked inside of organizations, run campaigns, dealt with multicultural issues, how does something like, and I asked another guest on the show about this, how does something like the H&M mess happen, the coolest monkey in the jungle issue? Like, how does that happen, considering they're smart and equipped people who, are aware that they're not living in a planet alone, there are other cultures, other races, but can be so out of touch with how something's going to impact and land on the consumer? Same question about the Dove campaign.
I know how it happens, because I've seen it happen in organizations I worked at. Everything is very decentralized, right? So, and there is no checks and balances in certain areas. So, and the people that are running those organizations or those departments, just kind of move it along. They don't really think about it. I mean, there's a fundamental issue, right? Like there's creative people that just don't get it.
Well, let's go back. You need to unpack this a little bit, because folks who haven't worked in your organization won't understand this. What do you mean by everything is decentralized? What does that mean?
So perfect example. I worked at one organization where, I ran what we called like the culture team, right? And the best thing and everybody knew that we existed there, but they worked on a particular brand and they just wanted to rock, They
didn't want to run things through the cultural team.
Yeah, to the culture team, right. They didn't want to run through it because they don't need to. The accountability structure didn't allow that, didn't require them to go through it. So they're like, yo, I got to do what I got to do. I got to hit my number. Yo, I know what's hot for myself because I understand my research, guys, and I'm going, but they don't have the context. Right. So,
but that also speaks to you said there's no accountability. They don't have the context. They had to hit their number. Why doesn't the culture team, at least in this organization, why didn't it have more heft, more weight, more?
Because there's institutional racism, dude.
Hold on. You said something that's getting interesting. You did. We're pulling it out, brother. All right. Okay, as you said, there's a thing called institutional racism. What is that? Because I think some people probably have no clue what you're talking about.
I mean, look, it's. I don't think they do it like. I don't want to call it just white folks. I mean, people of power, right? Don't want to be bothered with those things, right? So those organizations, those culture organizations, are sometimes put in there because it's something that keeps on coming up in a strategy that, hey, there's a lot of Latin people in this country, so we got to figure that out. Let's put a little team over there and let them figure it out, right? But I got to still do my thing. But they don't know how it's impacting the overall business, right? Or there's a lot of black people there, so, just throw a couple of black people and figure it out and just give them a little money, but we got to do our thing. You know what I'm saying?
There's not real parity and respect for the perspective and contribution coming from the cultural additions to the organization.
Yeah, or the cultural impact that those communities have to overall community, right? So they think that, or I hate to say they, institutions organize themselves in a way to solve what the strategy tells them to solve for, but they don't organize themselves in a way that actually really creates meaningful, accountable impact, right? So they think that they're doing the right thing, but it's really an organizational structure challenge that they have and a respect. And it's due to fundamental institutional
it's okay. No te preocupes. Say it.
Racism. No, but I want to go beyond the racism. It's it's constructed by how things were created back in the 30s and 40s.
The systems that were put in place didn't contemplate the nuances and evolution of our society.
Exactly. They created it in these segregated kind of ways, right?
And it continued on.
And it manifests like this every so often.
Yeah.
So what's happening now? I don't know what's going on in H&M, but they're like, oh shit! Like, first of all, they didn't think it was going to be a big deal, right? So
and it's a foreign company.
Yeah, and they turned it off, and they're like, look, that's going to go away, and it kept on coming and coming and coming. And then because we have so much cultural context through the feedback mechanism that we were just talking about, social media, so now they're like, damn, now we got to deal with this.
Yeah.
And they don't even know how to get into that because their purview is
it's so small. And the people that probably could help aren't empowered to really have an impact.
Exactly.
They don't
even know how to ask the question, who to ask the question to. Like, I've seen situations where like some stuff is crazy and there is a campaign and they're running back and forth, and like we're all like standing right here.
We're right here, guys. Remember the two Latin guys you hired, or the multicultural team?
Like, what's going on? You could ask us, and we'll let you know. But they'll do all this research and all this stuff, and I'm like,
that's ridiculous. That's
crazy.
Ridiculous. But have you ever seen it done right though? I mean, I'm wondering.
I've tried. It's challenge.
It's a rarity.
It's a rarity. Yeah, it is a rarity. I don't know if anybody's ever really solved it. Look, at the end of the day,
it's bigger than the organization.
That's what I'm saying.
It's a global issue.
That's what I'm saying. It's an institutional issue. I think where you see real significant change is when you have, like at the end of the day, is people who are sensitive to those things at senior levels that could pull that up.
They make the difference.
They really make the difference because they actually they breed a different type of culture within the organizations.
And then they tie people's bonuses to those things, tie people's their deliverables, their expectations, their accountability, and then even the teams that don't want to do it are forced to do it now. Let me check with Mr. Farfan on the cultural team, because if I don't, the EVP of my department is going to say to you, why didn't you talk to him first about that?
Exactly right.
So I have a curveball for you, and we're going to get ready to transition out of this conversation because I know you got big weekend ahead of you with the All-Stars and all the events going on. A lot of red carpets for you, right? El Patron. So no, my curveball question for you is this: we spend a lot of time talking about institutional racism and how big brands, big companies in the dominant culture get it wrong. Mm-hmm. Here's what I want you to tell me, because you've now lived on both sides of that coin.
Yeah.
So how do the smaller organizations populated by people of color get it wrong? What do we do? What does the Latin company do wrong? What does the Black organization do wrong? What does the Asian organization do wrong because of their limited perspective, only operating within an organization that looks and reflects themselves?
I go back to it. It goes back to the fundamental aspect of the institutions are forcing those situations to happen that are not really the way we behave as a consumer base, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. I just don't want to call out, but there's
no one's ever going to see this. Don't worry about
it. There's no media company look. God bless the people at Univision. I love those guys. God bless the people at Telemundo, and God bless the people at BET. All beautiful people. I've worked with all of them. I've given them a ton of money. And I believe in their cause because I'm the culture guy buying all this stuff, but they're creating product that's not really what the way the consumer is evolving to. I think they're now being challenged by that. But
they're behind the times, is what you're saying?
No, the system forces them to behave in that way. I'll give you a perfect example. When I created MTV3, you know.
Wait, hold on. Wait. You said you created MTV3.
Yeah. I worked with a team to create that, yes.
No, don't clean it up now, man. You just took credit for all of it, man.
No, I can't take credit for it.
You just said you created MTV3.
Yeah. I can't take...
Let me give you some props. Javier Farfan from Washington Heights, El Patron, El Tigre created MTV3.
Yeah, with a group of people. They
didn't mean anything, Javier. I know. You did it all.
But when we worked on that, here's a perfect example. We heard the consumer loud and clear. Hey, you know, we live two worlds. Like, we speak English. You know, we listen to hip hop. We listen to Jay as much as we listen to freaking the new urban movement called reggaeton at the time. We knew what the value proposition looked like. We knew how we would have to program it to reflect what they were telling us. We brought it into, the organization. And then the organization is like, this might take a little bit of our MTV dollars from, because it's 18 to 34 and there's, 20% of them are Latino. We have to really make it a little more Spanish.
Make it more Latin.
Yeah, make it a little bit more Latin. It just doesn't, so we're going to cut into our business, whatever. And then you dumbify it, you know what I mean? Same thing happens with, look, there was a need when Univision was created. So props to them the first 20 years. But then it started evolving. But they couldn't because the advertisers were like, I already buy over here at ABC. Like, I'm not going to, oh, you're doing only Spanish language? Okay, I'll give you the money for that. And then they created a niche and you're feeding that monster. And then they don't want to let go of that, right? Because now they dominate.
They become victims of their success, become victims of that structure.
And then they personify that image to Latins,
and Latins are rejecting it, like, yo, that's not me anymore.
Yeah, but but that's all they can get, so they feed off of that, and then they don't kind of evolve.
I see. Oh, so wait, so you're saying these multi-conglomerate organizations that promote images and content that is outdated or doesn't reflect the evolution of the particular population helps to keep that population constrained in the box of. All I do is this. All I know is that.
Exactly.
And then they keep adding to the problem.
Add to the problem.
That's deep.
So that's
super deep, man. Pull up on that one. That was deep.
So that whole process is happening, and so what's the beautiful thing about digital is that it's really leveling everything.
It breaks all those barriers.
It breaks all those barriers. So now you can come in and like say, stop that and start creating stuff. Yeah, and here I am. And even if it's 3 people doing it, you have a lot of them. And then now Univision's like, fuck, now I got to do
what they're doing.
Yeah, I got to figure that out because I feel like that's something they're saying is actually right. And now that all the research is doing it, but let me do it a little bit.
Exactly. Or let me buy the company, try to replicate what they're doing, and then end up destroying it because you bring your entire organizational structure and old ways of doing things and just decimate this new budding, nurturing thing we're trying to create.
Exactly. So, and look, I love BET. Like, BET is dope. Like, they have some really dope stuff that has come out of it, but they could have pushed the culture forward a lot faster.
Yeah, of course.
And it's the same situation.
But I think the folks in their defense, the folks at BET who may give me money one day for this podcast, I think those people would say in defense, they're doing the best they can under the circumstances they're operating in. Not all could say that, but some, because having worked in these organizations and knowing the layers, you have a situation where it's like, hey, I want to do it this way, but you got to report up to like 3 or 4 bosses, right?
That's my point.
So you're the underboss, but you got the boss, right? And you got the boss's boss, and they're like, listen, I don't care. That's my ad dollars. You're not touching that. That's gonna cannibalize my other business. You're not doing that. That doesn't make sense to me from where I'm from in my suburban experience. So you can't do that. And then you're stuck with like, I want to do more, but my hands are tied because I like this paycheck. It's a golden handcuff.
But I mean, it's the same thing. And that's what I'm saying. The institutions don't allow the involvement to happen, right? So that's where I get challenged by it, because really it's not an ethnicity play anymore. It's really a culture and lifestyle play. You have to push that culture forward. I give props to, like, Diddy and what he's doing with Revolt, and even Jay, what he's doing with TIDAL and just everything that he's doing. He's really pushing that agenda. He's combining like high art form with kind of the urban culture, and that's why they've been always kind of pushing that lever. They understand their consumer, and they push the products that they do, and they push them forward, and we have to continue to do that. And what's starting to happen is big celebrities like that could do that now. They can create media companies because they have already a huge following, and then you just have to put it on the web and or some digital format, and people will get it.
First I gotta call you, but yeah, that's kind of the part about it. You got to create another MTV Tres for them. All right,
exactly right.
So listen, before we cash out this conversation, I want to give you an opportunity to promote something or anything you're doing or working on. Anyone you want to shout out? I know you're at the university now teaching a class.
Yeah.
Is it in marketing?
Yeah. So yeah, I'll
you don't have to. I mean, you could keep that under the wraps. I just wasn't sure if there's something you want to talk. Yeah.
I was thinking there's probably a couple of things. So one of them is, the school thing is great, actually, because it actually keeps me very relevant. Right now I'm teaching in New Jersey, where I reside, but I'm still a New Yorker.
What town in Jersey?
Maplewood.
Your name ringing out in the streets of Maplewood? Or not really, right?
No.
Yeah.
But you know who comes out of Maplewood that's dope? The singer that she's down with Kendrick Lamar, the female one. She has
no idea.
Not
Sierra.
No. Come on, that's our general.
Yeah.
No, but I can't remember. But whatever. So Seton Hall University.
SZA?
Yeah.
SZA?
Yeah, SZA. She's from Maplewood.
Okay.
Which is dope. So but I'm also working. I'm working with a ton of folks, but I'm working with media companies that are trying to do a lot of that stuff, really disrupt the way culture is being personified by major media institutions, and really kind of starting changing that perception. In next month, we're going to be launching a new brand.
And you say you mean Wolf Enterprises and this
J Wolf Advisors.
J Wolf Advisors
is helping them kind of figure stuff out. I'm not launching anything. It's not my money. I'm just advising them on how to think about it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm doing the same thing for another company on the sports side. So just kind of
the real brains behind all these operations.
Being a marketer and trying to make sure that they're delivering the right thing to the consumer is what I'm doing.
It's so humble, Javier. So good to have you on the show as always.
Right,
so you created MTV Tres, you know what I mean? The brains behind all the marketing successes out there. Yeah. Pepsi needs to hire you back, man. But listen, it was good, man. It was good seeing you, good having you back on the show. You killed it as always. You're a real heavyweight in these streets. We got to keep coming back and keep teaching us how to market our businesses into success.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So anytime you're ready to brand that El Patron, holla at me. You know what I'm saying? Get the tat. I got the tat right here. Please know what I'm saying? And then, but again, it's a pleasure.
All right, sir.
Better late than never.
Yep.
And I'll see you on the red carpet tonight.
Yes.